Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stephen Lockhart with Star Systems International, and we're very pleased to be sponsoring today's session on Express Managed Lanes. Just going to put my slides up here. Just a very brief word about Star Systems. Okay, so Star Systems, we're a global technology provider that's very focused on RFID, specifically readers, transponders, and antennas. In addition, we also offer professional services and products for smart city applications. We are not an integrator, but we work very closely with our integration partners, helping them optimize the RFID piece of their overall solution. Our flagship product is the Titan. The Titan is a high-speed, multi-antenna, multi-protocol tolling reader designed specifically for high-speed open road systems. It employs an innovative cognitive radio design that allows the Titan to deliver accurate and consistent data to our partners. We provide a range of professional services, including RF performance analytics, lane mapping, and transponder population analysis. We have a broad portfolio of transponders dedicated to high-speed tolling. However, there's two products that are relevant to a managed lane discussion. Those are our multi-mode transponders. The Gemini is a 2-position multi-mode tag, and the Apollo is a 3-position multi-mode tag. These products are certified by Omniair and are designed with an intuitive sliding mechanism for the driver to self-declare the number of occupants in the vehicle. These tags are also fully customizable in terms of artwork and encoding. So in closing, Star Systems, we're a dedicated team of RFID experts with many years of experience in the tolling market, and would love to help you. Let us know how we can. And with that, I think I need to stop the slideshow. And I am privileged and pleased to introduce the moderator for today's session. Shadi Shazbek has more than 20 years of experience in planning, designing, and construction experience for large transportation products. Shadi is a national expert on managed lanes, planning, and design. He has managed the planning, design, and implementation of the express lane corridors for several public agencies such as Caltrans, VTA, ACTC, and BATA. He has led the implementation of some groundbreaking projects in the state of California, such as the implementation of the first express lanes in the Bay Area, the I-680 southbound express lanes, and the first dynamic shoulder running lane in California, the I-580 RSR shoulder running lane. Shadi is a member of the TRB Standing Committee on Managed Lanes. Shadi, I'm looking forward to a great session. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Steve. And welcome, and thank you all for joining us today for this should be exciting webinar on managed lane and HOV enforcement practices. I'm Shadi Shazbek with Kimberly Horn and the moderator of today's session. I want to thank Steve and Star Systems for their sponsorship for today's event. We all know Star Systems, but it's great to learn more from the presentation that Steve just gave. If you're joining us and you're not familiar with IBTTA, IBTTA is a global organization that represents owners and operators of toll facilities and the businesses that serve them. I'd like to point out that this is a special event done as a partnership between IBTTA and the TRB Standing Committee on Managed Lanes, ACP 35. TRB Standing Committee on Managed Lane has partnered with IBTTA many times over the years, and it's always been a great opportunity to connect the findings from planning and research with the implementation and lessons learned from agencies running price managed lanes. We're all very excited. We have over 500 people registered for today's event, and I see we're already at 283 in attendance, and counting. So we're looking forward for a really great discussion today. And we have a great set of presenters today. Kristen, if you're gonna move to the next slide, please. We have Eric Coraggio, project manager with Transurban. Barkev Tatevosian, principal transportation planner with LA Metro. Jamie Mackey with freeway operations manager with the Utah Department of Transportation. And Dan Lammers, senior program manager with the North Central Texas Council of Government. I know we're all excited to get into the discussion. So I'm gonna point you all to our presenters' bios on the IBTTA event website. In the interest of time, we're not gonna read all the bios, but we have uploaded their bios on the event website. But before we begin, I'd like to review some logistics for today's event. This webinar is a 90-minute webinar, and I apologize, there has been some glitches in the invites that were sent. So you may have gotten a calendar invite for 60 minutes, but I hope you can stay with us for the next 30 minutes at the end for Q&A. All the participants are gonna be in listen and view only mode. Type in your questions through the chat function, and make sure you set the chat to send to panelists and attendees so everybody could see those questions. This webinar is going to be recorded, and the presentations and the webinar will be posted on the IBTTA website. And at the end of the event, we're going to send a short survey for the attendees and the registrants to get your feedback on how we can improve these virtual events in the future. All right, with that, I'd like to go to the next slide. So now it's my great pleasure to hand over the program to our first speaker, Eric Coraggio from Transurban, to talk to us about Virginia and what they're doing in the managed lane space there. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shadi. I appreciate it. And thank you, TRB and IBTTA, for putting this together. This is my first webinar, so excited to give it on this program that I've been working on for a very long time. My name is Eric Coraggio. I'm a project manager for our innovation team here at Transurban. I've been working on innovative projects for over 5 years here now, anything from autonomous vehicles to new sensors on the roadway, and more recently focused on Transurban's Fair Travel program. Before I get started, a bit about Transurban. So we are a multinational toll road operator working in 3 different countries: Australia, the United States, and Canada. We have 17 roads operating in Australia, 3 here in the US, and 1 in Canada, and many more projects down the pipeline. Here in Northern Virginia, where I'm working, our 3 main assets are all located in the Northern Virginia region around Washington, DC. We have 3 assets, the I-495, I-395, and I-95 express lanes. With a number of projects coming down the pipeline, we're currently extending our I-95 asset down south of our road, 10 miles south to Fredericksburg, Virginia. And then we have an extension coming up on our 495 lanes, basically going up to the border of Maryland and Virginia. So really excited to continue for these growth opportunities for Transurban as the region continues to look for express lanes to handle our gridlock in this area. A bit about how our express lanes work here in Virginia. So our express lanes are run parallel to our GP lanes, or general purpose lanes, where you're able to go on our lanes to skip traffic. Our HOV drivers, which is our 3 or more people on our lanes, are able to travel on our lanes for free. You're able to go and get your free ride by taking your Easy Pass Flex that we have here and switching it to HOV mode. And then if you want to skip traffic and you have less than 3 people, you can travel in toll mode or just use a regular Easy Pass. And then you pay a dynamically paid price depending on the amount of vehicles on the roadway. The more traffic there is, we raise the prices to kind of make sure that our lanes are free flowing. The way that we designed the system to enforce our HOV originally was that when you travel on the express lanes, and you are in HOV mode and you go under one of our toll gantries, a beacon flashes, and then a Virginia State Police trooper is just ahead of those lanes and looks back and kind of sees if the light flashes. If the beacon flashes, the trooper then looks inside the vehicle to see if they have 3 or more people. If they do not, they pull that person over and give them a citation. And you can imagine how difficult it is for troopers to be pulling over people when they're going at 70, 75 miles an hour. It's raining, it's dark, there's dry cleaning in the window. So there's a bunch of obstacles for our troopers. They can only do it at our gantry. So there's a bunch of obstacles left for our troopers. And Transurban kind of got to thinking like, hey, there's some fundamental flaws to this type of enforcement. And so we want to kind of dive deeper. And this is where the Fair Travel program came out of. So we had a theory years back that people were taking their flex transponders and putting them in HOV mode, even though they didn't meet the required occupancy in their vehicle. And so we called this misusing their flex. And so what we wanted to do was kind of dive into this region and dive into this area and say, all right, what is the current status of people who are claiming HOV even if they don't meet it? How far reaching is it? And what can we do to address it? It's a major issue because when somebody claims to be HOV and they don't meet that requirement, they're increasing toll prices for regular paying toll paying customers. And they're taking up a lot of room on the road so that if we want to push people off the road by increasing our toll prices, it's more difficult because there are more people on the road that aren't affected by price because they're getting a free ride anyway. So what we did was we designed an entire program focused on increasing compliance of HOV rules on our lanes. And one thing that we've recently launched is called our correction program, which I'll dive into later in the presentation, which uses vehicle occupancy detection cameras to go and charge customers directly if they misuse their flex. One thing that we wanted to make sure is that we want to use everything in our arsenal that we can use. So between the Virginia State Police and communications, that we're trying to address this issue from all angles. So something that we did was we implemented what we call the repeat misuser beacon. So we are able to identify with cameras on our road who's our top flex misusers. And what we found was that we were able to kind of identify who are our top people on our list. And so we actually had those beacons that I was speaking about before flash a different color. And so that indicates to the troopers, hey, this person's not only in HOV mode, but we've seen this person misuse their flex multiple times. So it gave the troopers more confidence in who they pull over. And then two, it also allows us to pick people and pull people over who misuse more. So it's more efficient when you pull people over. We actually found an 80% increase in compliance when somebody's issued a citation. We also developed and deployed a mobile beacon, which allows troopers not to just pull people over at the gantries, but anywhere on our road. We prefer to put these on our exit ramps because they're slower. It gives the trooper a chance more to look inside the vehicle, and it's safer because people are going at lower speeds. We've also implemented a number of communication programs. So whether it's social or earned media, we've been putting a lot of campaigns telling people how to use their flex transponders. You'd be surprised how many people, when we sent out a survey, didn't know which one was HOV mode and which way was toll mode. And so we got a lot of positive feedback from our customers about these education campaigns. We also send direct notifications to people we knew that were misusing their flex, educating them how to use it. We saw about a 1% increase in compliance when we send those emails and letters out. And we also put up messaging signs on our dynamic messaging signs. The exact wording was HOV3 enforced, $1,000 max fine. And we saw that we can decrease HOV cheating where those signs were by around 3%. So as you can see, we're throwing everything we can at this issue to make sure that we're hitting it from every angle. The Fair Travel program is not just one silver bullet, but about a number of programs that we worked on. However, what we found was we had an issue with these current programs, which is our Virginia State Police were very effective at changing behavior, but covered a little bit of a road. What we saw was that our troopers could only pull less than 2 in 1,000 flex misusers over. So it's a very, very small percent, less than 1% of our people misusing their flex were actually being pulled over. We saw that we can reach a lot of our people with our communication programs, whether it be emails and dynamic messaging signs. However, they were not that effective. And so what we really looked for was a program that can be effective and reach a large portion of our program. So this is where we developed with the Virginia Department of Transportation, the HOV toll correction program. So the way the HOV toll correction program works is if a person is driving on a roadway and they're in HOV mode and they travel through a gantry, and we take a picture with our vehicle occupancy detection cameras. I have a photo coming up those cameras soon. And we look to see how many occupants are inside. We manually verify to make sure that we're absolutely positive about our occupancy of that vehicle. And if we see the person is misusing their flex, where they have less than 3 people and they're in HOV mode, we send them an email and saying, hey, we're going to charge your EasyPass account because we saw you in the wrong mode. We give them a chance to dispute. So we give them a 10-day window to call us or email us to say, like, hey, I had a child lying in the back of my car. And if we don't hear from them, we charge their EasyPass. One thing that we do want to stress is that we make sure before somebody heads down this program is that we educate everybody before they go down this program. So we send them an email saying, hey, we saw you doing the wrong, we saw you in the wrong mode. Here's how to use your EasyPass Flex. Let us know if you have any questions or comments. So give them a chance to make sure, kind of give them the benefit of the doubt that we tell them how to use their Flex, and allows them a chance to kind of change their behaviors. Like, hey, oh, I didn't realize this is the wrong thing. I was just getting free trips. Gives them a chance to kind of change their travel behavior before we send them down this path. And so this was a result of a number of conversations we had with the Virginia Department of Transportation about what policies are best for our customers and what policies are fair. So a bit about history about the Fair Travel Program. You'll see on our right here are our cameras, our VOD cameras that we place on 495 right now. We are currently using our vendor Indra. They've been a great partner, and they were able to install these cameras in the middle of a pandemic all the way from Spain. So I've been really glad to work with them. They've been a great partner. We first trialed our VOD cameras out in summer 2015, where we basically want to see what is the accuracy, how clear are the images. We were pretty happy with what we saw. And so in the fall of 2017, we did a more permanent installation on our I-95 road, where we had a semi-integration. So we used timestamps to kind of match our polling equipment with our VOD equipment. And we were able to kind of just use some SQL tables to understand, all right, here are the people who are misusing their flex. And that's how we kind of started our data. In summer 2018, we launched our repeat misuser beacon, which I talked about. That was our first time we were able to monetize our vehicle occupancy detection cameras. And then in fall 2019, after much discussion with VDOTs, we were able to approve of this correction program. In fall 2019, we also did a VOD vendor comparison. So we had 3 different VOD vendors that we trialed on our 495 lanes. And so we were able to go and trial different cameras and see which ones were more accurate, which ones had clearer images, and which one we're able to integrate with our roadway. And then in January of this year, we trialed the correction program with a limited number of transponders. We were very happy with the results. And then back in August, we restarted the program with fully integrated Indra cameras. And now we're still working on that program, and we're still correcting transponders as we speak. Some results that we've seen so far about the program, due to COVID-19, our HOV rates, as I'm sure many other managed lanes rates, have plummeted. And so one thing we've noticed is that it has changed the behavior of the HOV flex misusers dramatically. And so right now, it's still too early to kind of determine the behavior change, just because these crazy times that we're in. And due to the fact that our prices are so low, since traffic is low right now, we believe that we're getting a very different behavior change than we would have normally. So if you charge somebody a $2 toll rather than a $12 toll, you're going to get a different behavior change than what we originally expected. We have been very happy with our dispute policy that we've set up, where if somebody calls in and they say, hey, I had 3 people in our vehicle, we send them an image of their vehicle and give them a chance to verify how many occupants they have. And if we don't hear from them, then we just go ahead and charge their toll. But what we've seen is basically once we send that image of that vehicle, it's been kind of radio silence. They're very clear, and it makes a big distinction about that. Our customer contact rate is pretty low, so we're at 2.5% of emails that we send out we'll get a contact about. We've had calls from, hey, I've had 3 people in the back of my vehicle, 2 kids in the back of my vehicle, and we kind of say, we don't see them. To basically people asking, saying, thank you for educating us. I think some people really appreciate it. They're like, I had no idea how to use my Flex transponder, and thank you for sending that email. And then one thing that we do want to stress is we have a number of privacy and security protocols that we have put in place. Anywhere from blurring of images to consistent purging of images after a number of days. And so we have a number of policies to make sure that we feel that we're doing best for the customer. One thing that we consistently, the reason why we called it the Fair Travel Program is because we wanted it to be fair in all essence. So a lot of people find high HOV rates, high tickets to be kind of unfair because some of them actually do it by accident. And so one thing that we've consistently done is say, all right, what is fair for these customers? And so we're only charging the toll. We're making sure that we keep their privacy in mind. And every step of the way, the customer has been head of mind. I just spoke really quickly, so I don't know if I'm at my 10 minutes, but that's it. Please email me if you have any questions at ecoraggio@transurban.com. We have a number of other programs coming up down the line. We trialed a new mobile VOD mobile VOD solution, which puts VOD and you can just kind of move it around. So we have a number of things coming down the pipeline, and we're really excited to share that in the future. Anyway, thank you very much. Chadi, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Eric. Great presentation. And there's a lot of questions coming your way later. We'll go next to Barkev with LA Metro. Barkev, you're up. Please unmute yourself and share your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Chadi. Hello, everyone. Give me one quick moment. Let me share my screen. Okay. And we can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having LA Metro as a panelist and a presenter. My name is Barkev Tativosyan, and I work as a principal transportation planner for the Los Angeles Metro in our congestion reduction department. Here we manage the 2 express lanes in Los Angeles County. So we have 2 corridors in LA that have express lanes, and these are on the I-10 freeway and the I-110 freeway. Here is, as I move to the next slide, here's a overview of our system map. And as you can see at the top, going east to west is the I-10 express lanes. And over on that left side, going north to south, is the I-110 express lanes. As I said, we have 2 corridors. These opened in 2012 and 2013. They allow for either HOV2 or HOV3 toll-free travel at some set times. Transponder is required, and these are freeway median running lanes. They either have 1 or in some locations 2 lanes actually running. There's some direct connectors, and there's some designated entrances and exits to get you directly onto the express lanes as well. Moving on to the next slide, we have our policies and our operations. And our method of HOV discount is based on self-declaration with the Fast Track Flex transponder that's pictured on the bottom left here. This has been a little problematic. The transponder has a switch on it, which has to be declared, of course, by the driver of the vehicle prior to the trip. But this started a vulnerability issue of people somehow misdeclaring and led to a need of an occupancy detection system. Buses and motorcycles generally ride for free on our system, and some sections have a painted buffer, and some have flexible post barriers, some have a concrete wall. So there's designated areas for people to get in and out of the express lanes, and there's signs to alert people when the express lanes are going to stop, when they need to move over. And there's some reminder signs that they have to have a fast track transponder to be in the express lanes. some of the challenges that we've had are with enforcement. And our general enforcement strategy consists of dedicated CHP enforcement. So CHP is the California Highway Patrol, and we have a budget with them of about $3 million to enforce the express lanes. Again, like I said earlier, we have channelizers to discourage illegal ingress and egress, but again, there's still some issues that need to be enforced. We have transponder switch setting indicators that assist the CHP in showing what the occupancy switch was set to and declared on the transponder. But there's only a handful of places where the CHP can safely park the vehicle on the freeway to enforce this. And there's only so many traffic stops that a CHP officer can do in a day. So by our estimates, there's a 25 to 30% misrepresentation on our express lanes of the occupancy that's declared. And on to the next one. Our system, the way we designed it, it's designed from the ground up, and it's integrated with our back office system in addition to our roadside system. So it's not a standalone system in many aspects. It's designed with laser triggers, front and side view cameras, and an imperceptible near infrared flash, which is designed to cause no interference to any of the motorists at any part of the freeway. Each of the sites that we implement requires a toll collection gantry, an overhead ODS gantry, and on the side, a ground level ODS structure for the cabinets and side mounted equipment. And this is a picture of the installation on the I-110 freeway when they were installing that pole. And I'll move on to our implementation strategy and how we started the ODS project. We had tests to see if this would work for us in 2015, and we analyzed 14,000 vehicles in 24 hours and found that 95% of these vehicles were captured by the system. And the system had an automated accuracy of 85%, meaning without any intervention, the system was able to detect 85% of the occupancy correctly. With improvements and adding some manual review stages to the implementation, we can improve the system to be extremely accurate. And again, this was installed at the highest level demand corridors, on the corridors. So there's one location on the I-110 and a two-lane location on the there's a one-lane location on the 10 and a two-lane location on the 110. And this cost about $11 million for implementation and operation and maintenance for 1 year. This is a general site layout for a two-lane system. And so, one of the main questions is how do you get photos of two vehicles when they're literally side by side? And so the way this works is it's designed into the system. The vehicle starts by going under the toll collection gantry, which triggers the ODS laser. And as the vehicle passes the ODS laser, it triggers the pictures to be taken, which are taken from the front. So you can see into the windshield, and from the side to see into the side seats. So again, like I said, the illuminators are near infrared, so there's no interference to the drivers. And what this looks like on the field is like this. So you have on the left, the big picture here, you see the far gantry is the ODS gantry with the front camera and illuminator. And the near side gantry is a toll collection gantry that has the TSSI indicator, the cameras, the triggers, and the toll collection equipment. And then on the right side here, there's, you can see the laser trigger on the toll collection gantry and the side camera and illuminator on the side of the freeway. And what this results in, So some sample images before and after redaction. So as you can see, before redaction, it's pretty clear how many people are in the vehicle. But what we do is we redact and we enhance. And what redaction and enhancement does is it doesn't only remove any privacy issues, but it enhances the picture to be able to see the backseat occupants through the side images. And sometimes even in the front images as well, you can see the backseat. Some of the challenges that we've faced and noticed include some second row side view obstructions, some tinted window challenges, third row seating visibility, child car seats. All of this, we're constantly tweaking the system to resolve these problematic scenarios. And we're creating, exclusion lists, manual review lists of how to go about better implementing. The schedule of how this all worked out, the preliminary design work was started in about 2017, and it was reviewed by the board in early 2018. Designs were prepared in 2018 and approved by Caltrans, and we started fabricating in 2019 and installed early 2020. And so far, in the last couple of months, we've completed integration testing and are currently tuning and calibrating the system for a go live that's to be determined in the near future, sometime in the near future. The original schedule had us complete a little earlier, but here we are. And we included slides on public education and outreach to show that we really went out of our way to make sure that people know that this is coming, that this is going to be happening, to give them an open and honest view of what's coming. And this includes the changes to our toll policy and the toll amounts and the processing fees. And and we just wanted to be open and honest with people to make sure that they understand that we're not trying to impede on anyone's privacy or anything, and we're not taking any pictures or anything that can't be observable from a regular public setting. And if you want to see more information about this, you can check out some of these references on the PowerPoint. And basically, it's just all the public documents that we have out there. There's some press releases, there's some ODS results, there's our web pages that show everything about ODS and what the drivers need to know. And there's some vendor pages as well that are public. And that being said, that's all I have to discuss, and I'll be open for any questions when we have the question and answer time.
All right, thanks, Barkev. We'll move next to Jamie with UDOT. Jamie, if you can take yourself off mute, please, and share your screen.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here today. My name is Jamie Mackey. I'm the Freeway Operations Manager at UDOT. And so I not only run our express lane system, operations and maintenance, but I also are over our ramp meters and then all of the traffic data we collect to operate those systems. Before we go into it, I wanted to quickly show you our system. We have our express lanes are on the left side of the freeway, single lane the entire way. We have the double white stripes separating with accesses roughly at every interchange. And then the overhead signs showing our dynamic toll, which range between 25 cents and $2 per zone. We have the longest express lane system in the country with 72 centerline miles. We are adding 10 more to the north in the next few months. So we have a lot of infrastructure, and that plays into sort of some of how our solutions played out. We do have an express pass, which is switchable on off. You use this if you want to pay a toll. If you're a forever carpooler and just want to get in the lane for free, you don't need anything. There are no requirements to be a carpooler, HOV 2+, or a bus or motorcycle in our lane. Our enforcement is only through our highway patrol. It is their overtime hours. And so in the past few years, that was really hard to get. They're fully staffed now. And so we dedicate about $100,000 a year to them. And I think the other speakers have really spoken to this, but it's not a priority for them. It's not a safety issue. It's really hard to identify someone in the first place while you're moving at 70 miles an hour. It's really hard, especially during peak hours, to actually identify someone and then pull them over to the right side of the road. And so they don't like it, and it's just overall not terribly effective. So we've come up with, because this transponder is self-declarable, it really leads, the honor system isn't a great thing for your express lanes, we've learned. So we have a sort of three-prong approach to combat this problem. First is just transponders for everyone, carpool or not. That'll just make everything else a lot cheaper and easier to implement. And then adding license plate cameras initially in selected key areas only to find vehicles that don't have a transponder. And then some sort of occupancy verification or validation system. As I said, with all of our infrastructure, the cameras are not exactly a cost-effective solution for us. So we were really hoping to find something that was easily scalable. And so what we're testing right now is a phone app by a company named Ride Flag. And it's the whole technology is on your phone. You need one phone per trip. And the concept is that you match a photo of your passengers and drivers at the start of the trip and at the end of the trip, and you use the math of their face to make sure that they're the same person. There's also a video component just to make sure it's not a static image. Privacy in Utah, it's a big deal. People don't like that we're being invasive. And so what we liked about it is that the photos never leave the phone. All the phone is really communicating is the number of occupants that it was able to confirm. And then when we do track vehicles on the freeway, but only on the freeway corridor. So we have a pilot going with them. We started in last fall and plan to go live to the public this spring. And then COVID hit and we just put the brakes on. And so this September we started, and we're seeing, reduced participation, we think, because of COVID. Our incentives aren't as great. The original incentive was to waive tolls for the entire month while they participate. And with our tolls are pretty cheap right now, so it's not as enticing. And then they have to complete 8 trips a month to continue on to the next month. And then in theory, they could participate for a total of 6 months. Here's a little bit more on how it works. You see some images over to the right. So first, the driver creates that user profile, and they enter in their Express Pass transponder number. When they want to drive in the express lanes, they start that trip using the phone, and any passengers they want to add, they take a picture of. Then they keep the app on and drive in the lanes using that transponder. When they exit and stop, they hit end trip. And then sometimes it will ask them to go through an audit process where they retake all those photos, including the driver's photo at the end of the trip. We like this because it's configurable. It doesn't have to happen every time. And you can start bracketing your customers into buckets of trustworthiness and really configure that so it's not too burdensome on people who are using the lanes very honorably all the time. And then on the back end, they receive a credit for that toll. Some charts about how things are going. So on the left is participants, and on the right are the trips we're seeing. The chart on the left shows that at the end of October, we have only really invited about 100 people, and 23 are actively participating with at least 4 trips in the month. And so we're hoping as things go on, we will add more and more people before this is over. On the right is our number of trips in each week. And there's a couple interesting trends here. One is that at the beginning, you can see many of the trips were solo trips. And some of that were people just interested in how the app worked and wanting to test it. Others were because even though it was everywhere that you only needed to use the app for carpools, it was still really hard to get that message through. And so we found a lot of people that were confused why they weren't getting their number of trips up to 8 when they had done a bunch of solo trips. And so you can see by the end of September, a lot of people were rushing to get their 8 trips to continue on in the pilot. And then, now we're seeing about 5 to 8 trips a day on the app. And it's a little disappointing to not have so many people, but at the same time, it gives us the ability to call many of them and really find out how they're perceiving this. So a couple lessons learned and feedback. So right now, if you're a customer, you have to do literally nothing to get in the lane other than get behind the wheel. So understandably, adding a process there isn't going over terribly well. We expected that, and I think that's fine. They also, a lot of people don't want to necessarily start that express lanes trip when they're at their house or wherever they're leaving. Many of them don't plan to use the express lanes. It's something that they might use if there's an incident or unexpected congestion. And the nice thing about the app is that the driver actually doesn't need to engage with the phone until the very end of the trip. And so it's not necessarily an unsafe thing to allow the passenger to add themselves mid-trip, and then once everybody's stopped, to perform that audit. So a couple things we've learned is just that communication. People aren't really reading very much when we have a website or an email that goes out to them. And so we missed the boat a little bit on conveying the purpose of the app. The app technology itself is complicated because there's 2 primary cell phone lines out there, and then they're at various stages of battery life and user expertise, I guess. And so definitely not a barrier, I would say, but something that we need to plan for. And that comes to that final lesson there is making sure that we provide a nice, convenient, easy way for people to occasionally excuse themselves from this requirement. And not in a way where they'd be able to use it all the time, but if their phone's battery is dead or they just got a new phone or whatever is happening, it's just not working that day, making sure that we have some backup methods. That's all, and I'm excited for the discussion we'll have a little bit later.
All right, thanks, Jamie. You're having some questions as well for you in the chat window. So if you want to chat with the members, and then we'll go to Dan next. Dan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shadi. Let me just get my screen shared here. Okay, I'm assuming everybody can see my screen now. The first thing that I want to make sure I touch on before I go any further is the system that we're using, the Go Karma system, and explain how we got there. But you have to understand, in our world, it is not about enforcement, it's about verification. So you're going to hear me say that several times throughout this. Nothing in our program will end up in a court or result in any fines. It will just result in ensuring that the users of the system pay the correct toll. So that you have to understand just going into this to see what we're going to be talking about here. Okay, next slide. Seems to be frozen for me. Okay, let me stop sharing a second. Try a different one. just lost my.
Dan, do you want me to share slides for you?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead? For some reason, I don't even have the option to share anymore. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is our system in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and you may be asking yourself, why is the MPO in a large region worried about HOV verification, occupancy verification in HOVs and managed lanes? The reason being that we have several private operators or a private operator of several of our facilities in the region. And our deal with them and with TxDOT was that the MPO would pay for the HOV discount that's associated with the managed lane. So that's why it's the MPO that has led the charge on the vehicle occupancy verification system. So this is our system. Within the next 3 years, 4 years, it will be built out to over 120 centerline miles. We still will have one existing HOV lane that will continue to operate as an HOV lane. You see it in the eastern side of Dallas County. To give you an idea of the size of this system, our region is over 10,000 square miles, represents about 7.5 billion people. So this is a pretty significant system that we're building out. Everything you see in orange is open. The 2 facilities you see in red are under construction right now. And then we have the one in blue, which is the HOV lane that will go under construction sometime probably in the next 10 years. But that will be later down the line. Next slide. Do you have the next slide up? Oh, there we go. Okay, so the issue that we've had, one of the issues that we've had, and you'll see a few more in a second, is that we actually are split between 2 TxDOT districts, the Dallas district and the Fort Worth district. We were not able to secure a single HOV enforcement group for our entire system. So on half the system, we have the Dallas County Sheriffs doing the HOV enforcement. And on the other half, we had the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office doing the enforcement. And you'll see it split. And of course, it splits between facilities, which makes it very awkward and very difficult. That's just one of the issues that we had going forward. We had to have separate contracts with both of those organizations. Next slide. Okay. In addition to the officer district issue, we operated similar to the way Eric's system was operating in Northern Virginia. We required pre-declaration, although our pre-declaration was not with a tag, it was with an app that was developed by the private operator of several of the lanes. And the app worked very well, but there were a few challenges associated with it. One was in order to get around people trying to mess with their phones mid-trip, we required a 15-minute pre-registration before you went under a managed lane gantry. That caused a lot of issues with people. Secondly, it was very costly. We were spending almost $2 million a year in paying for the 2 sheriff's offices. We had to buy them equipment, and they just did not have enough officers to enforce. The other thing you need to understand is our HOV discount, and HOVs do not go free on our managed lanes. They get a 50% discount only during the evening and morning peak periods. So if you look at that, you really can't have enough officers out there to really do any meaningful enforcement. Anecdotally, they were telling us they could at most pull over 2 or 3 vehicles in an hour, which doesn't leave you much enforcement at all. And similar to the way the other systems work, when the declaration was activated and you went under a gantry, a light came on, and the police officer had to essentially try to determine at a high rate of speed if you had 2 people in your vehicle or not. If you didn't, he would chase you down, and occasionally would find there was somebody asleep in the back seat or something along those lines. It was very hazardous for the police officers. In fact, they actually came to us about a year in and said they actually wanted no part of the HOV enforcement anymore. They could barely pull people over, and it was creating traffic hazards because they had to pull out into high-speed traffic, chase people down, and try to issue them a ticket if they were shown to be violating. And the last, the other thing that's important on that is once the citations were issued, the district attorneys in all of the counties in our region refused to take those violations to court, claiming that they were not moving vehicle violations, that they were more akin to somebody using a toll road without proper license plate or without a proper toll tag. So it was more of a theft of service violation than it was a traffic violation. So the courts were refusing to pursue those. Our violation rate, similar to the ones you've heard before, somewhere between 30 and 50% on our facilities. We know for a fact that there are a lot of violators that would pre-register and not be HOV and get the HOV discount whenever they wanted to. Next slide, please. So we, after a series of 5 or 6 years worth of RFIs and RFQs and RFPs, we finally settled on an RFP about 5-ish years ago, in agreement with TxDOT that the MPO would move this program forward. Through our RFP, we identified Go Karma as the winning proposer. We had assumed that we would get a lot of video camera, static camera detection methods, but the Go Karma app was extremely new. In fact, it hadn't even really been fully developed at the time they proposed, but we were so intrigued, we thought it would serve our needs. Essentially, the way the system works is everybody that's going to be counted as an occupant in a vehicle has to download the app. They download the app one time. They register the app with the system. If you are planning to be a driver, you also register the app with your vehicle and your toll tag. And there is a small Bluetooth device that goes in every vehicle that helps all of the system communicate with each other. Passengers do have to download the app, but they download it again. They download it once, register, and then they're in the system for good. The beauty of it is that's all you have to do. From then on, whenever you're in the vehicle with somebody else that has the app on their phone, the system itself knows you're an HOV and simply reports that trip to the Go Karma servers, which then communicates with the back offices of all of our managed lanes to match the toll transaction with that trip. And the HOV discount shows up on the toll bill when they get it in the mail. So it's a very simple system. Next slide, please. So we started this in January of 2020. We went live in January of 2020, earlier this year, where we moved from our HOV self-declaration app to the new automated verification app. And again, the whole point is we're charging the correct toll. So within the first 9 months of operation, there are 35,000 registered users, representing 30,000 vehicles. So why are there more users than vehicles? As I explained, if you're a passenger, you also have to download the app and be a registered user as well. There have been registered over 800,000 transactions that average about 40 per active driver. So each of those vehicles that are registered have averaged about 40 trips during that period. And the average is about 1.5 persons per trip. So again, the app knows if you're a single occupant vehicle. So that's how you get the 1.5. So about half of the trips that people with the app downloaded are SOVs, and the other half are counted then as HOVs. Go Karma has a great customer support system. To date, almost 13,000 support tickets have been submitted. They have an average of a little less than 5 minutes per response time to each one of those ticket requests. And then once they understand the issue, less than about 21 minutes, 22 minutes to close the ticket. So 83% of the folks that have opened a support ticket have been very satisfied with the system. Of course, there's a lot that have never even opened a support ticket. Next slide, please. Okay, now a lot of people have asked us, but what about violations? Well, we don't have HOV. There's no such thing in our world as an HOV violation. You're simply going to pay the proper toll. So in our world, it's an app usage violation. So if you try to cheat the system, you're not in violation of any law. You're in violation of the user agreement that you agree to when you download and operate the app. And the way the app violations are monitored, because it's on your phone, it does require you to have GPS activated and Bluetooth activated. And if you try to turn those off, the system will warn you that you no longer will be eligible to get the HOV discount. So with the HOV or with the GPS activated and Bluetooth activated, the system knows when registered users or vehicles are near each other and looks at habits and patterns. And if they see two phones next to each other 75% of the day, there's a good chance that somebody is carrying two phones around with the app installed. And then we issue a series of education letters, getting a little more stern as it goes along. We have a 5-step escalating communication policy. And at the end of those 5 steps, if you haven't changed your behavior to use the app correctly, your app use is suspended. The first suspension is 30 days. And if you continue to violate, it gets more and more egregious. And the suspension becomes more and more. To date, we've only discovered a 2.7% app usage violation rate. And after the initial education process, 99% of the potential violators have changed their behavior and have begun using the app correctly. And you see the numbers there with after 4 different communications, 99% of the people have changed their behavior and are using the app. Less than 1% app suspension rate. And as of today, I believe there is only 1 person that had been totally suspended and now is back using the app again. And their behavior, now that they're back using the app, is within the proper use. So the system seems to be working just fine. Next slide, please. So what have we learned from all this? What we've learned is people are very willing to pay a toll if the HOV discount is easy and convenient to get. I think we all know that. I think we've discovered that throughout the country. The system that we've used enables officers to attend to other duties that they're needed for. Their safety is of primary importance, so it allows them to not have to pull people over, and it allows them to do other things. And as I said, it's reduced the demand on the court system because no longer are these going to court. And ultimately, we found that there is a very high user satisfaction with people using the app. Again, it's the download it, register, and then you forget it. If you, as I mentioned before, if you try to, or if you accidentally turn off either GPS, Bluetooth, or close the app, it will warn you that you will no longer get the HOV discount. So that's our system. Next slide. If you need to have further questions about this, you can either call me or my colleague, Natalie Becker, those email addresses. And before I wrap up, I just want to thank IBTTA for working with the Managed Lane Committee at TRB to put this on. Kristen, Wanda, you guys have been great to work with. And as the co-chair of the committee, I want to thank Chadi for putting all this together. So with that, Chadi, I am done.
Thank you, Dan. Great presentation. All right. We have a quick quiz that we're going to put up on the screen here in a minute. Just to poll the groups and see what they think of what you've heard so far. So if you don't mind, if you were to predict the future, tell us based on what you learned today, what you think is the most likely method to prevail at the end. And we know there's some other technologies out there for HOV enforcement or managed lane enforcement and toll enforcement. So we'll give it a few seconds for people to answer, and then we will see what people think. And in the meantime, I want to welcome Robert Campbell from LA Metro. Robert is going to join Barkev in answering some of the Q&A questions regarding the LA Metro system. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Chadi. Glad to be here.
Okay, drum roll. Okay, app-based. Wow. So looks like even though the technology is still newer, a lot of people think app-based is going to be the way of the future. That's interesting. Okay, we've been getting a lot of questions on the side here on the chat, and thanks for our panelists for answering them. But I want to go back to Eric. Maybe we got a lot of questions about cost. What's the estimated cost to build, one of these sites? What's your ROI return? Do you recoup the cost with the toll that you're collecting? And
Yep.
So if you can talk about that.
I can't go into the exact numbers, but yes, we do recoup the costs. One thing that we calculated, so I posted in the chat, is that we have 6 sites that we installed, and so out of our 23 gantries, and so we kind of just did a calculation about when it's worth for us to stop installing these, when we get diminishing returns after 6. So because those 6 sites can cover 91% of our traffic out of all 23 gantries. So they're strategically placed. And so by reducing the number of cameras we operate, you can get much higher returns on that.
So on that note, there was another question about, how do you determine the location of these 6 sites? What's the frequency? What's the spacing between them? So how did you determine that 6 was the right number, and what's the spacing on those?
Yep. So I was speaking a little bit about how we have three different assets, and so we have one going each direction on each asset, and so we determined the locations by the infrastructure available there and the space available to install those equipment. So we need to make sure that we're able to put those on there. A lot of our roadways, there's some very narrow right-of-ways that we can't install equipment on. And then we also looked at our traffic numbers. So saying, all right, what % of our traffic goes through certain gantries, and that's how we selected those sites.
Okay. Jamie and Dan, on the app question, there was questions about, what if you have a child? Do you have a senior citizen who doesn't have a smartphone, doesn't have the app? How do you handle those kind of situations? And maybe we'll start with Jamie first.
Sure. So that's the nice thing about this being a pilot, is that we get to figure those details out. And so we know that the app works fine for young children who are awake. We recognize small sleeping children will probably be an issue, and maybe that's what those alternative methods are for. Not having a phone is probably something else we need to plan for.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So I mentioned in my presentation that there's a small Bluetooth device that goes in a vehicle. Users also have the option of getting what we call an occupant pass, which is a separate Bluetooth device that can be carried by somebody that doesn't have a smartphone with the app installed. And we've worked with GoKarma to ensure that within the app agreement, you have to agree that you're not going to leave that extra occupant Bluetooth device in the vehicle at all times. Again, because it knows when they're in proximity to each other. So we know when you've left it in the vehicle. We ask that you put that occupant pass into something that goes with the child, like a diaper bag or a backpack. So is the system perfect? Well, no, it's not. But as I mentioned before, in our previous system, we were only to identify a handful of potential violators every day. This at least gives people the option of doing it right. And we think it's actually cut down on the violations with people not trying to cheat the system, because the algorithms that GoKarma have put in place really can determine whether people are using the system properly.
Jamie, another question for you. You're building up your pool, so to speak, of users to test the system. How do you determine what the right number of people in the pool to have so that you can have an accurate result? And is that pool intended to be representative of the greater potential users, such as, by age, by income, by having a transponder versus not having a transponder, etc.? Can you speak to that point?
Yeah, so right now we've only reached out to people who do have transponders. We have a free program for clean vehicles, and boy, it's nice to have a sticker transponder in your window that you can just keep there for eternity. So we don't want to be handing out any more of those than we have to right now. So we are sticking with people who have express passes. We reached out to all of them before, back a year ago, to gauge interest level and how often they're on the freeway. And so that's unfortunately kind of what we started with. And then with COVID hasn't been the most accurate survey anymore. So right now it's nice because we started slow. We're more focused on whether or not we're still getting good feedback and sort of the call volumes we can tolerate. There's still some new app versions getting out there. And so this current month, we're actually pausing new invites so we can push that and test that. I think for no matter what, we've already learned a ton about the technology and how we might write a spec for it in the future. And so I think getting a massive number is less important to us now than it might be, maybe it was before.
Okay. Do you have a specific number you want to get to, like a significant pool, pool of people?
I mean, I think at this point, if we could get from the 100 we're at to 300, I would feel really confident that we had at least a good sample. I don't know that we're necessarily focused on the age range at this point, because I think we know we need to make alternatives for that.
Okay. Barkev and Robert, some of the questions came up because you're in California. We do have California laws that apply to us that may not be in other states, particularly the requirement to have an image to go with the violation notice if you were to enforce it. So can you speak to what's the long-term plan here with the deployment of the VOD system on the LA Metro Express lanes, and how you're going to handle that part of the law?
Sure. And we do so we do hold on to the redacted versions of the images as Barkev showed. And so if a customer has a question about how we arrived at our conclusion regarding their occupancy at the time, we can review those images or the redacted images. And so those are always available. Yeah, I hope that answers. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a another follow-up question about sharing the pictures with CHP so that they can enforce it. Is that something that you can share with the CHP? Do you have arrangement in place, or think more, around the data security and the privacy laws that you have to also abide by as an agency?
Absolutely right. We are bound to, we have to honor the privacy of our customers. And so the only way that we would ever release images to someone other than the customer would be by means of a search warrant or something that we were legally bound to obey. No, our system is not designed to give officers real-time information in the field. The image processing alone takes over 24 hours sometimes, depending on whether it needs to go to manual review. We're not set up to be integrated directly with CHP for roadside enforcement in that regard.
Eric, we'll go back to you. What % of your read need to have that manual image review? Do you have a number on that?
So every single time we reach a customer, we guaranteed VDOT that we would do a manual review. So it's not really, it's just a percentage of people that we contact. So that was a promise we made to VDOT. Anytime we send a customer an email or we correct a toll, that they would be manually reviewed. So we don't do 100% of our images because we're not contacting every customer about this, but anytime we contact a customer, we'll do that.
But does it have a percentage of the total that you actually read, but you don't contact, like, because it is 2 or 3 in the car?
It's changing as traffic changes. So right now we're capturing 12% of our traffic with the amount of cameras that we have, because we only have 1 camera installed and installing 5 more. So it'll change. And also 495 has a much different HOV rate than 395 and 95. So we expect that to kind of, when we install those, there'll be a lot more reviews. So a specific number, no, I don't have that for you.
Dan, question about your process. You had an app originally and you went to Go Karma, and you mentioned when you put the RFP out, you were expecting more of a camera-based system, not the app. When you did get the app, did you have to do anything on your agency side, policy-wise or process-wise, that you had to do something different in order to be able to use an app-based declaration and enforcement system?
Yeah, it actually goes a step back further than that. I mentioned several RFPs, RFIs, RFQs were issued. One of them right before we did ours was issued by TxDOT as an RFP. And that's the one we thought we would get all video enforcement. And Karma proposed on that. And we're one of the shortlisted firms to be interviewed. What we discovered in our deliberations to choose that winning proposer under TxDOT's process was that TxDOT, like a lot of other DOTs, are very good at procuring things like concrete and steel, and not very good at procuring cutting edge technology that is not even available on the shelf at this point. So we worked with TxDOT and reissued the RFP under the MPO's name, which our procurement process is a little more flexible when it comes to procuring innovative technology. So it actually worked out very well. Part of our agreement with Go Karma is that this technology can be implemented statewide under the auspices of our agreement with Go Karma.
Dan, we'll stay with you, and then we'll go to Jamie with this question as well. Can you speak to any incentives? Do you have any incentives program as part of your app? And also incentive to form carpools. Can people form carpools using the app?
So right now, we have 2 separate programs. One is the Go Karma verification app, and the other is what we call DFW 511, which is our incentive program, or it's called Try Parking It, part of the 511 program. It's called Try Parking It, which is a voluntary system that people can register and get credits other discounts and things at merchants for voluntarily carpooling and reporting their behavior. We're working with GoKarma to eventually integrate those two together. The great thing about the GoKarma system, because it's all app-based, and it can monitor travel by time and location. So any travel behavior that's affected by time and location, we can, and occupancy, of course, we can give credit to a user. So it doesn't have to be on our express lane or managed lane system. It can be anywhere in the system once we get that integration complete.
Jamie?
Yeah, so in terms of incentives, right now, being in the pilot has incentives of free tolls anytime you drive, but eventually we hope this would be the only way, one of the major ways to receive the free travel for being a HOV 2+. We do at UDOT have a program called Travel Wise, which is really meant to help people make different modal choices than a solo driver. And RideFlag has talked with them about how this can actually be, the original app was actually used to generate carpools, and Florida is using it, I believe, in that way. At this point, our scope is really narrow, and so we're not necessarily exploring that.
Okay. Dan, quick follow-up question for you. Can you give any insight on cost of the GoKarma solution? What did it cost you guys to do this approach?
Okay, very good. Keep in mind that we did this procurement in 2 phases. One was to pay for the app development, and the other is for operations. And we essentially worked out a deal with GoKarma for 10 years at a total cost of $16 million, which averages out to be 1.6 million. Now, that includes an amortized development cost for the app. That was part of it as well. It seems like a lot, but as I have told other folks, we were spending nearly $2 million a year on virtually non-existent enforcement through law enforcement officials. So to us, it was a win-win situation, and it gives us the ability to incentivize other travel going into the future.
Question for Barkev and Robert on the LA Metro system. What challenges have you faced deploying the VOD so far, given the open lane environment that we typically have in California? We have express lanes that are either continuous access or only 2 feet away from GP lanes with no physical separation. So can you speak? I think you touched a little bit on that during the presentation, but if you can elaborate more on how did you handle that?
I'd say that probably a couple of the biggest challenges that we've run into are we're one of the first agencies. In fact, I believe our specific approach or specific design, we're the first ones in the country that are directly integrating in a express lanes environment in this way. And so there have been some opportunities to learn how we can better tweak and calibrate the system. But as a result, those have added a bit of unexpected time to our deployment schedule. But luckily we had some buffer built in, so we kind of anticipated that there'd be some lessons learned along the way for us, given that we're one of the first out of the gate with this type of strategy. Another challenge that we didn't foresee, that I don't think anybody foresaw, was the pandemic when it hit, and we had this drop in volumes in our lanes. We were anticipating using a certain number of test cases just for tuning and testing and calibration of the system before we deployed. And when our volumes dropped, the samples that we were able to collect to calibrate and tune the system also dropped. So that's been a bit of a challenge too, that I'm sure that all agencies are dealing with in some form. But it's been a learning process for us, and fabrication of equipment also took longer than we expected. I think there was a bit of a bottleneck in some of the fabrication, some of the supply chain pipelines last year. So something that we thought would take a few months ended up taking upwards of a year. But again, luckily we had things working in parallel, and so that didn't have any didn't have as significant impacts on our schedule as we thought they might when we first heard about the delays to our fabrication.
But we'll stay with you with this next one too. How do you calculate the VOD system accuracy? And as a follow-up, is there an accuracy number you would like to get to at some point where you say, okay, this is ready for prime time deployment system-wide?
So our accuracy is based on, we have QA/QC image reviewers that take a second look at these images, and they can either flag them as indeterminate, or they can give a result for occupancy in those vehicles. And whenever we have mismatches, those would be counted as cases of inaccuracy. We also, of course, do investigate whenever a customer in the future, once the system is live, if a customer were to call in and challenge one of our determinations, we would then re-review it again and potentially would flag another inaccuracy there if one was identified, or if we just determined that, you know, this image just can't be confidently evaluated one way or another. So that would be a measure of our accuracy. And in terms of where we're hoping to get, well, we certainly want to be better, at least as good, if not better, than what our initial pilot test in 2015 showed. And if I recall, I believe it was about 85%. We'd like to see well above that. In fact, I think that given what our vendor has said they think is possible, was upwards of 95% or higher. In fact, I think it may have even been 99%. But we'd just like to see something that was certainly at least as good, if not better, than what we saw in our limited sample from 2015.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. All right, maybe one last question. Let's see. Dan, since you have a longer time with the app so far, can you speak to your agency policy around data privacy and personal identifiable information, and what did you have to do differently, and you know, are there any issues with the app providers about sharing data or concern about that data being sold to third party?
Yeah, so as part of the app development and the contract development, the data cannot be shared with anybody else for any reason. The personal identifiable information is stored in the Karma website, and the only information that you need to really give them is your name, email address. If you're a driver, you also have to identify your license plate and your toll tag number so that the charges can be credited properly. But other than that, that's all that there is. The location information is stored on the Karma server and cannot be used for any other purpose other than the application of the system. Much to the chagrin of even my own staff members who know that there's a significant amount of travel data that's available there, but we don't even have access to the data.
Okay, well, we're 5 minutes from our time, so I want to just take a minute to thank our panelists today for their time, for the great information, and thank all our attendees for also the great questions. Some people asked if this information is going to be available, and the answer is yes. The presentations and a recording of this webinar will be posted on the IBTTA website within a day or so. So encourage you to check the website. On behalf of IBTTA, the TRB Standing Committee on the Managed Lanes, and everyone involved with the session, I want to say one more thank you to Steve Lockhart and our generous sponsors at Star Systems. There will be a survey that's going to be sent out to attendees and registrants of this webinar. So please make sure you fill out the survey and give us your feedback for future events. On the screen, you can see the future events at IBTTA. I would encourage you to also take a look at those. And all the registration information can be found at ibtta.org/events. And finally, thank you for spending the time with us this morning or this evening. I know we have some people from overseas, so maybe very late in the night for them. So I appreciate you being with us as well. And thanks our panelists again. Thank you. This concludes our webinar for today.